What if you could go back in time? Not to fix your mistakes, but to understand your parents? Baek Yoon-young didn't travel to 1987 to change history. She went back to face something far more difficult. The truth about her mother, the pain her father never spoke about, and the possibility that her existence was never a mistake. Episode 1. Baek Yoon-young begins her story not as a heroine, but as a daughter filled with quiet resentment. In 2021, she works as an editor for a successful writer. She once dreamed of becoming an author herself, but somewhere along the way, her own voice became secondary. At home, her relationship with her mother is strained. There are too many misunderstandings, too many unspoken disappointments. Then, in one ordinary day, everything collapses. Her mother dies. The news arrives without warning. A suicide note follows. And with it, guilt. Yoon-young is left with the weight of her last argument. The last word she spoke. The version of herself that she can no longer apologize for. In her grief, she says something that many children have whispered in anger before. If I could go back in time, I would stop my parents from meeting. I would make my mother live differently. I would erase this pain at its root. It is not just regret. It is a desire to rewrite origin. And somehow, impossibly, time answers her. When she is pulled back to 1987, she does not panic. She feels relief. Because for the first time since her mother's death, she has direction. She believes she can fix everything. Episode 2. In 1987, Yoon-young meets her mother not as mom, but as Suni, a teenage girl. Awkward. Lonely. Trying to belong. This is the first crack in Yoon-young's certainty. She had remembered her mother as distant, cold, overbearing. But the girl she sees now is fragile. Suni is excluded by her friends. She is insecure. She is searching for acceptance in all the wrong places. And she does not yet know the shape her future will take. Yoon-young calls her instinctively. Suni calls her glue uni. The distance between them is almost ironic. For the first time, Yoon-young begins to understand something profound. Her mother was once young. Her mother was once uncertain. Her mother was once hurt. And perhaps the woman Yoon-young resented was built from these moments. Still, Yoon-young does not abandon her original mission. She plans to stop her parents from marrying. She believes that if she removes her father from the equation, her mother will live longer. Happier. It is a daughter's desperate logic. Episode 3. By the third episode, Yoon-young's grief transforms into determination. She enrolls in her mother's school. She inserts herself into every interaction. She watches closely. She learns that her mother's writing may have been stolen by someone who would later become powerful. She begins to suspect betrayal in every corner. Her anger is no longer only about her father. It is about injustice. It is about watching her mother shrink herself to survive. Yoon-young wants to protect Sun-yi from every humiliation, from every wrong choice, from every future wound. But the more she interferes, the more complicated things become. When she nearly becomes a victim herself, she is forced to confront something uncomfortable. She is not as powerful as she imagined. Time travel did not make her invincible. It only placed her inside the fragility of the past. And in that vulnerability, she begins to soften. Episode 4. Living inside her mother's childhood home changes Yoon-young in ways she did not expect. She sees the exhaustion of her grandmother. She sees the quiet neglect within the household. She sees how dreams can slowly be postponed until they disappear. These are not dramatic revelations. They are quiet ones. Walking to school beside her young mother, sharing small conversations, watching her endure social cruelty, Yoon-young begins to feel something new. Not anger, not blame, but empathy. For years, she believed her mother failed her. Now she begins to wonder if her mother was simply surviving. Yoon-young's mission slowly shifts. At first, she wanted to erase her own existence if it meant saving her mother. Now, she is beginning to question whether changing the past is the real solution. Maybe understanding it is. The emotional core of Yoon-young's journey, so far. Baek Yoon-young's journey is not really about stopping a marriage. It is about confronting inherited pain. She starts as a daughter who thinks love means correction. But as she watches her mother as a young girl, she begins to learn something deeper. Love may mean witnessing. It may mean accepting that our parents were imperfect long before we were born. And perhaps the hardest truth of all, we cannot rewrite where we come from, but we can choose how we understand it. Episode 5. By this point in 1987, Yoon-young is no longer driven only by anger. She is driven by fear. She learns that another attack is about to happen. A woman will be chased near the river. And once again, she arrives too late to prevent the terror, only just in time to witness it. For Yoon-young, this is the first true realization that knowing the future does not guarantee control over it. She thought information would be power. Instead, it becomes burden. At the cafe, when she reveals that there may be more deaths than expected, something shifts in her. The murders are no longer distant events from a novel. They are real, immediate, breathing in the same air she is. And then Hae-jun presents a possibility that shakes her deeply. What if her mother did not die by suicide? What if it was staged? This question changes everything. Grief turns into suspicion. Suspicion turns into guilt. Because if her mother was a victim, then Yoon-young misunderstood her until the very end. In the classroom, she breaks down in front of Suni. The hug they share is quiet, but meaningful. It is the first time Yoon-young embraces her mother not as someone she wants to fix, but as someone she might lose again. Episode 6. The investigation grows darker. The blue cap, the ring, the shifting timeline. Yoon-young begins to suspect her own father, then her uncle, then everyone. For a daughter, suspicion toward family is not simple. It fractures identity. She is caught between two instincts. The instinct to protect her mother, and the instinct to believe in her family. When Hae-jun admits that he returned to the past not only to solve the murders but to prevent his own death, Yoon-young sees him differently. For the first time, she understands that he, too, is afraid. They are not heroes correcting history. They are two people trying to survive it. But the timeline begins to change unpredictably. Events move. Dates shift. A murder that should not happen still happens. Yoon-young begins to understand something unsettling. Maybe fate is not erased. Maybe it adapts. Episode 7. As new suspects emerge, one name unsettles her most. Her uncle. In the present, he is unstable, distant, broken in ways that were never fully explained. Now, seeing him in 1987, she questions everything she thought she knew. Yoon-young starts analyzing people not as family members, but as psychological puzzles. Who is capable of violence? Who is hiding something? Who is pretending? Yet in the middle of this suspicion, she witnesses something else. Her aunt nearly becoming another victim. Her mother navigating a world that undervalues her. The quiet sexism embedded in everyday life. The past is not just about one killer. It is about a system where women endure silently. And slowly, Yoon-young's mission expands. It is no longer only about preventing her parents' marriage. It is about understanding the environment that shaped her mother's life. Episode 8. The murders finally arrive with brutal clarity. 2 deaths in one night. Despite everything they changed, fate still claims its victims. Standing in the rain at the crime scene, Yoon-young feels something collapse inside her. The matchbox lies beside the body again, as if mocking their efforts. She begins to question whether any of this matters. If 2 lives are still lost, what was the point of interfering? But when her grandmother, overwhelmed by grief, walks toward the cliff with silent intention, Yoon-young understands something crucial. This is the moment that matters. Not the abstract timeline. Not the theoretical future. A grandmother on the edge. A family on the brink. And when Hae-jun pulls her grandmother back from death, Yoon-young does not speak. She simply holds him that night. That embrace is not romantic. It is gratitude. It is relief. It is acknowledgement that even if history refuses to bend completely, individual lives can still be saved. The turning point in Yoon-young's growth. By episode 8, Baek Yoon-young is no longer trying to erase herself. At the beginning, she believed the solution was simple. Stop the marriage. Change the outcome. Disappear if necessary. Now she understands that reality is layered. Changing one event may trigger another. Blame is rarely linear. Pain does not begin or end with one person. Her father is arrested. Her existence feels uncertain. For a brief moment, she believes she might vanish. But instead of clinging to fear, she continues searching for truth. That is her transformation. She begins this journey as a daughter trying to correct the past. She is slowly becoming a woman willing to confront it. And perhaps the most important shift of all, she is no longer asking, "How do I undo my life?" She is asking, "What really happened to my mother?" That question will guide everything that follows. Episode 9. By now, Yoon-young's emotional position has changed. At first, she wanted to stop her parents from ever becoming a couple. Now, she finds herself defending her father. When Hee Seob is arrested, she watches the situation unfold not as a detached observer from the future, but as a daughter witnessing her father's humiliation in real time. She learns that he has been protecting someone, enduring torture, choosing silence. And the person he protects is not a lover, not himself, but his brother. For Yoon-young, this realization is unsettling. The father she remembered as weak, unreliable, and disappointing is capable of extraordinary loyalty. When she sees him battered and limping, refusing treatment until his brother is safe, something inside her softens. This is the first time she sees her father not as a failure, but as a human being shaped by impossible choices. Quietly, she makes a promise. In his darkest hour, she will not abandon him. This is growth. She is no longer trying to erase him from her origin story. She is beginning to understand him. Episode 10. As Hee Seob recovers, Yoon-young observes something she once resented. The tenderness between her parents. Suni holds his hand. He reassures her. They choose each other openly. In the present timeline, their marriage became strained, cold, exhausted. But here, in 1987, Yoon-young sees the beginning. Not tragedy, but sincerity. For the first time, she does not interfere. She watches from the doorway. And instead of anger, she feels grief. Not because they loved each other, but because somewhere along the way, life changed them. This shift is subtle but profound. She no longer wants to prevent their love. She wants to protect its purity. Episode 11. The plagiarism is exposed. Her mother's writing, once stolen, is finally recognized. For Yoon-young, this is not just about justice in publishing. It is about dignity. In the future, her mother lived quietly. Her talent buried. Her confidence diminished. But here, she stands tall. When Suni proves the manuscript is hers, Yoon-young witnesses something powerful. Her mother claiming her own name. It is a correction not of fate, but of identity. And yet, even on this victory day, Yoon-young cannot sleep. She begins having nightmares. In her dream, the future is perfect. Her parents are together. The world is stable. But Hae-jun is gone. This frightens her more than disappearing herself. It reveals something she has not admitted aloud. Her connection to him is no longer strategic. It is personal. She fears a future where she survives. But he does not. Episode 12. The investigation spirals again. Min-soo is framed. Mi-suk manipulates the narrative. The police rush to close the case. Yoon-young realizes that truth is not fragile because it is weak. It is fragile because it is inconvenient. When Suni is kidnapped, everything becomes immediate. This is no longer about theory. It is about her mother's life. Yoon-young rides in the police car with her father, not as a child resenting him, but as someone who trusts him. That trust is new. When the scene turns violent and Byum-ryong is killed, Yoon-young feels the weight of inevitability again. No matter how much they change, death finds its path. And then the unthinkable happens. Hae-jun is arrested. She watches him standing there with blood on his hands. A matchbox in his pocket. The future repeating itself. For a moment, history threatens to collapse inward. Because this mirrors what she knows. In the future, Hae-jun dies. And now he is standing at the center of another crime. Yoon-young's transformation so far. From episode 9 to 12, Yoon-young's journey becomes less about rewriting fate and more about confronting truth. She has reevaluated her father, witnessed the origin of her parents' love, restored her mother's stolen voice, faced the possibility of losing someone she now deeply cares about. The woman who once said, "I would erase my father from existence," now stands beside him. The daughter who once blamed her mother now fights to protect her. And the traveler who believed she could control time now understands something quieter. You cannot dominate the past, but you can choose how you respond to it. And in these episodes, Baek Yoon-young chooses courage, even when history refuses to cooperate. Episode 3. When Hae-jun is handcuffed, Yoon-young feels the ground shift beneath her. She has already lost her mother once. Now she is watching someone else she cares about being taken away. But this time, she does something different. She does not panic. She listens. "Do you trust me?" he asks her. And she does. This moment marks a quiet turning point in her journey. At the beginning of this story, Yoon-young did not trust anyone, not her father, not her mother, not fate itself. Now she chooses trust in the middle of chaos. When Soon-yi wakes up and confirms Hae-jun's innocence, Yoon-young runs to him and embraces him without hesitation. The gesture is instinctive. It is no longer about partnership in a mission. It is about loyalty. And for the first time, she is no longer trying to control the future. She is standing beside someone, facing it together. Episode 14. The killer sends another note. Not to hide, but to taunt. Fear returns to Soon-yi's home. The police hesitate. The system begins to fail. Yoon-young notices everything. The indifference. The shortcuts. The willingness to blame the wrong person. In 2021, she lived with the consequences of these failures. Now she sees how they are formed. Instead of shrinking, she becomes more deliberate. She supports the decision to go public, to expose the danger, to force accountability. This is no longer a daughter trying to save her mother in secret. This is a woman willing to confront injustice openly. And yet, in the middle of strategy and investigation, there is still tenderness. A quiet trip to the ocean. A moment of stillness before the truth arrives. Yoon-young has grown steadier, less reactive, more grounded. Episode 15. The truth finally surfaces. The killer is revealed. Not a stranger. Not a misunderstood outsider, but someone deeply connected. When Yun-woo is exposed, the entire structure of the timeline trembles. The crimes were born from abandonment, resentment, and wounded pride. A cycle of pain passed down quietly. Yoon-young witnesses what happens when grief turns inward and becomes violence. And in contrast, she sees what her own grief has become. Not destruction, but empathy. She chooses forgiveness where others chose bitterness. Before returning to the present, she says goodbye to her father properly. Not as a resentful daughter, but as someone who understands his loyalty, his weakness, and his love. She forgives him. That forgiveness is not dramatic. It is simple, and it frees her. Episode 16. When the time machine fails to bring them home immediately, Yoon-young does not spiral. She laughs. She teases. She breathes. The urgency that once defined her is gone. She no longer wants to erase her beginning. She wants to protect it. Her goodbye with Soon is gentle. Soon hands her a published book, a symbol of the life she reclaimed. A life not defined by silence. Yoon-young once believed her mother's story was tragic and incomplete. Now she sees it as resilient. When they finally return to 2021, the world is different. Her parents are together, not perfectly, but peacefully. Her home is warmer. The past has not been erased. It has been understood. And understanding changes everything. The completion of Baek Yoon-young's journey. Baek Yoon-young began this story as a daughter trying to undo her own birth. She believed her existence was the consequence of a mistake. She believed love had failed her. She believed rewriting the past was the only way forward. Across 16 episodes, she learns. Her father's flaws were shaped by loyalty and sacrifice. Her mother's silence was shaped by survival. Fate is not a straight line, but a web of fragile choices. Most importantly, she learns that she does not need to disappear to fix anything. She needs to understand. By the end, she does not stand as someone who conquered time. She stands as someone who made peace with it. And perhaps that is the real miracle of her journey. Not that the past changed, but that she did.